History 1. This happened a few months back, but I still can't figure out what it was. I'm too frightened to return to my house, so I'm renting a place on Airbnb. I've been trying to make sense of what happened ever since, but I still have no answers. Here's some background. I moved into a new house, and right across the street is an old abandoned manor. I know it sounds cliché, but that actually drew me to the house. I've always been fascinated by abandoned places, especially ones with creepy stories. For instance, this manor was owned by the same family for decades, but in the 1900s, the last family members living there vanished mysteriously all at once. It's been abandoned ever since. I thought that was pretty cool. At first, everything was fine, and I was really enjoying my new place. But then, I got curious about the abandoned manor. I felt compelled to check it out, so I managed to get inside. Right away, the vibe felt wrong. I can't explain it, but something was off. I felt like someone was watching me. I hurried back to my house with my heart racing for no reason. I've never really believed in supernatural stuff, so this was a bit strange for me. I think that's when things started to change. Whenever I walked home late at night, I felt like someone was watching me from the manor across the street. Soon after that, I started hearing noises in my house late at night while I was in my bedroom, especially in the kitchen and living room. I didn't think much of it because I often hear sounds when I'm about to fall asleep. You know, when you're just about to sleep and you hear things in the background, but it almost feels like it's part of your dream? Well, it was always like that. So I could never be sure if I actually heard something or if it was in my dream. But why would I dream about dishes being moved or someone walking around my home? Now, fast forward to last night. I was sleeping in the living room because my bedroom gets really hot during the summer. So I grabbed my blankets and slept on the floor, something I've always enjoyed doing since I was a kid. I got everything ready, turned off the TV and all the lights in the house. When I turned off the light in the living room, I got a very uneasy feeling. So, I hid under my blankets and started scrolling through funny videos until the feeling went away. Yeah, I know it sounds silly. I instantly felt safe under the blankets. I put my headphones in my ears, but I didn't plug them into my phone yet because I was still looking for something to watch. I got distracted, scrolling through Instagram and looking at funny memes. Then, I heard a voice in the corner of the living room, and I froze. I couldn't move or do anything. I was too scared to even make a sound. I heard something say, "There's one thing you don't seem to understand." Then another voice said the same sentence, but the words overlapped, and I couldn't make out the rest because they were talking at the same time. It started with one voice, then two, then three, and so on, until it became confusing. The whole time my body was frozen in shock. I didn't know how to respond. I can't even remember exactly what I was thinking. Then suddenly, all the voices stopped at once. A few hours passed, and I was still frozen in the same position. My body felt so uneasy that I wanted to move my leg or do something, but I was still too scared to even do that. Just as I was gathering the courage to move, the voices started again. It began with one voice, then two voices at the same time, and so on. They were saying, "There's one thing you don't seem to understand." Now I wished I could hear more. But with so many voices speaking at once, it was hard to understand. This time I wasn't going to miss it. I carefully moved my fingers to the closest app I could use to record. I started recording a video so I could listen back and see if the voices were real or if I was imagining things. After I finished recording, I forgot that my recorder automatically plays back the video. So, when the video played out loud, my heart stopped, because whatever was in the corner of my living room now knew I had recorded it. As soon as it played back, I quickly plugged in the headphones, and all the voices stopped at once. But at least I had a recording now, so I could confirm I'm not crazy, even though that just made it worse, because now I knew something was really there. Another hour passed and I was terrified. By the way, I still wanted to move my leg as several hours had passed at this point. It was really hot under the blankets now, and it's the middle of summer, so I was sweating a lot. But I wouldn't dare peek out from under the blankets because I was scared of what might be out there. Things started calming down again, and I decided to watch something funny just to make it through the night until morning. The next time I opened my eyes, it was morning. I told everyone about this weird incident, but as you already knew, no one believed me. They all thought I was just imagining things or dreaming. Now I can't stop thinking about what happened, and I'm too scared to stay in that house. I think I need to move to a new place, or I will lose my mind. History 2. Back in 2018, my 3 buddies and I, all guys in our early 20s, decided to head over to Bali for a week. The trip was affordable and we had some time off, so we thought, why not, right? Our plan was to check out the sights, sample the local cuisine, hike up a mountain, hit the beach, and do all the typical vacation activities in Indonesia. It turned out to be an incredible experience. The country is stunning, and the food was out of this world. However, I had some issues with the locals. There were always folks trying to sell us stuff on the streets, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this was just the start of our troubles. The real problem began when we returned to our Airbnb one night. We had an early start the next morning, and were pretty worn out. The place was dirt cheap and didn't even have a proper lock on the door. There were 2 wooden doors that swung inward, and the only way to secure them was by sliding a wooden block through holes in the door. It was a basic lock, but it worked, I suppose. Everything was fine until the last night of our trip when we realized the wooden block was missing. I figured maybe one of us had misplaced it. We ended up using a selfie stick to keep the door closed. Not the best idea, I know, but it was the only thing that fit. We went to bed that night, not expecting any trouble since we'd been there for 6 days without any issues. Suddenly, I woke up to strange clicking sounds in the middle of the night. I got out of bed, thinking maybe it was one of my friends. I casually walked towards the noise but noticed all my buddies were fast asleep. The sound seemed to be coming from the door, so I walked over feeling confused. I saw that the doors were slightly open and the selfie stick was bent. Peeking outside, I saw 3 people trying to push the doors open. They were right at the entrance, looking through the gap. I shouted, asking what they wanted. Then I noticed one of them had the wooden block in his hand. I was shocked and confused, because I recognized one of the men. He usually cleaned the Airbnbs during the day. It didn't make sense for him to be there at 3 a.m. The other guy asked if the wooden block was ours, claiming they found it outside. I knew something was off because there was no good reason for them to be there at that hour. I called out to my friends and the 3 men quickly ran off. I explained the situation to my friends, and we stayed up all night just in case they tried anything else. The next morning we reported the incident to the Airbnb reception, but the description I gave didn't match their staff. They told me their housekeeping team were all women in their late 30s and 40s. We were terrified when we realized we'd let a complete stranger into our room while we were away. Thankfully, nothing valuable was taken, and we got out of the situation safely. I can't imagine what would have happened if I hadn't woken up that night with the doors almost being opened. History 3. I want to share this story to warn people. It's not really scary, just strange, but at the time, it really freaked me out. So I'm traveling around the country in my car. I've been driving for over a week from my hometown and have been sleeping in my car to save money. It wasn't until I reached a big city that I decided to treat myself to a nice bed. So I chose Airbnb as it's cheaper than hotels. I booked it the day before I arrived in the city, and there weren't many options left. I found an apartment on Airbnb that looked new and modern. It was in a great location and the price was very good. However, the only downside was that it was a new listing with no reviews. I thought the price was low because it was new and decided to give it a try. When I got to the apartment building, it looked older than I expected. I later realized that my room was probably the only renovated apartment in the building, which seemed to be in poor condition. It looked more like a dorm than an apartment building. Anyway, I let it go because I wasn't paying much, so I didn't expect a lot. The apartment itself looked like the pictures, so that was good enough. Everything went well for the first 2 days. As a woman traveling alone, I always make sure to stay safe. I don't go out after dark and always lock the door using every lock, including the chain. On the 3rd day, I was out all morning and came back to the apartment to change before going to the beach. I locked the door again, including the chain. While I was in front of the door watching TV and changing, the door suddenly unlocked, and someone opened it. I am very lucky that I had put the chain lock on the door, or it would have opened all the way. My first reaction was to say, "Excuse me," and I quickly closed the door and locked it again. I didn't see who was trying to open it because I came from the back of the door. I realized that this person could still get in since they had the keys to the apartment. Then I thought maybe it was the owner coming back after I checked out, but I wasn't supposed to check out until the next day, so that wasn't possible. I calmed down and called the owner. I explained what had happened. She said only she and I should have keys, and she was at work, so it couldn't have been her. Now I was scared to stay in the apartment because someone could easily come in, but on the other hand, I didn't want to leave because all my valuables were there. It was a lose-lose situation for me. I called my dad and he said it wasn't okay for someone else to have keys. He spoke to the owner, who promised to come with a locksmith to change the locks and give me new keys soon. She explained that she had owned the apartment for only 6 months and that before my stay, there had been only one other Airbnb booking. She also said the apartment had been empty except for those 2 bookings because she was renovating it. That explained why the building looked bad and didn't match the nice apartment. She suggested that the person with the keys might be the previous owners or someone connected to them. How could it happen that I was gone all day, every day, and the only time someone tried to come in was when I was home for just 10 minutes during the daytime? What were they trying to do by coming in? Maybe this happened before, or maybe they saw me arrive and wanted to do something bad. These questions keep bothering me, but I feel incredibly lucky that I used the chain lock on the door. I don't even want to think about what could have happened. I definitely won't be leaving a good review, and I won't stay in an Airbnb without reviews, or that seems too good to be true in the future. History 4. So before I tell the story, you should know a few things. My bedroom is downstairs and I live with my parents, one sister, and a housemaid. Now, I always lock my door when I'm in my room because it makes me feel safer, and the key is always in the lock on the inside of the door. I never take the key out of the lock as I don't have a spare key, so I never lock the door from the outside. Then a few days ago, our housemaid, Maria, saw me in the living room upstairs and asked if I could unlock my bedroom so she could clean. I laughed and told her it wasn't locked. She said she was sure it was locked as she tried opening it several times, thinking it was stuck since she knew I was upstairs. She got scared and thought someone had come in since my sister Lily was upstairs with me and my parents weren't home. Besides, they would never go into my room and lock it. I went downstairs and opened the door right away. It wasn't locked or stuck. I've lived in this house for over 10 years, and my door works perfectly. I've never had any problems with it. It doesn't creak or get stuck. So I tried to see if the door was stuck, but it wasn't. I closed and opened it gently, roughly, and in every way possible, and it always opened normally. I brushed it off and told Maria it was probably just stuck that one time. But she insisted it wasn't stuck, and said it felt exactly like a locked door because she pushed really hard and it wouldn't open. I didn't really believe her, and didn't think much about it. The next day, Lily forgot her straightener in my room. She kept knocking and trying to open the door, so she called Maria. And they both tried pushing really hard, but it wouldn't open. When I got home, I saw them trying to open my door. I laughed and thought they were playing a prank on me. Lily was really angry and asked why I locked my bedroom. I told her I hadn't, and when I went to open it, it opened right away. They both looked at me like they had seen a ghost. I didn't believe them and thought they were definitely joking with me, even though they don't usually do things like that. Then yesterday, the same thing happened again. My dad, Frank, called me and said he received an online order I made. He tried to put it in my room but found it locked, so he left it outside since I wasn't home. That's when I began to get really worried. I asked him if he thought the door was stuck, but he said it wasn't. It was clearly locked. The window has bars on the outside and is always locked, so no one could get in that way. It's impossible for someone to lock it from the outside because the key is always attached to my door from the inside, and there's no spare key. I'm really confused and scared. Is there some unknown entity stopping others from entering the room? History 5. On June 26th, my boyfriend Jake, his best friend Tom, and Tom's girlfriend Lucy, along with me, drove up to Big Bear. The next day, another friend, Dave, joined us on June 27th. Dave was supposed to sleep downstairs while the couple slept upstairs, as there were only 2 bedrooms. The cabin was very remote with no lights outside, nestled deep in the woods with coyotes howling and bears around. Despite the eerie setting, everything seemed normal. However, on the night of the 27th, around midnight, when Jake and I were in bed, Dave, who was sleeping downstairs, started banging on the door, clearly panicked. He said he had been sleeping when he heard what sounded like someone walking outside. When he got up and looked out the small window, he saw a big man trying to open the front door. At first I thought he was joking to scare us, but Jake took it seriously. He got out of bed, checked the entire cabin, and even went outside. We went up to Tom and Lucy's room, which had a porch with a sliding glass door that looked out into the woods. Now, it's important to note that I am naturally very anxious and scared, while Jake is very calm and logical. I tend to imagine the worst, but he always stays calm. So when Jake went over to look around the last place in the cabin and pulled the curtain, he suddenly jumped and yelled, "Oh my God!" Now, Jake is a CrossFit coach, and seeing a big guy like him scared made me feel sick. He locked the door and backed away slowly, quietly saying, "There's a large man standing outside staring at us. He's just standing in the woods looking at us." Everyone started freaking out. I ran and locked the door behind us, and we all decided to stay in the room and keep watch. It was the middle of summer and very hot, but we refused to open a window. I was really scared but tried not to show it. About 30 minutes passed with no further incidents, so I got annoyed with the heat and the fact that there were 5 people crammed in a tiny room with 3 of them being men. Jake and I decided to go back to our room, but I was still pretty scared. Jake tried to cheer me up. It was around 1:30 a.m. by then. I told him I was too scared to sleep with the lights off. He understood and told me it was okay, so we just lay there with the lights on. Finally, I started drifting off to sleep when I heard a thud. I sat up and looked at Jake. He looked back at me, and then the power cut out. I immediately started crying. I tried to get out of bed and run, but my legs got tangled in the sheets and I fell. Jake picked me up and we grabbed our phones and ran to the room where everyone else was staying. I was really upset at this point. I tried to contact our host, but nothing worked. I tried to call my dad, but all our phones showed no service. We were completely isolated out there. Luckily, Dave, who had arrived later, had a different phone carrier, and his phone had 1 bar of signal. He didn't waste any time and called the local sheriff. Now, looking back, it might have been an overreaction, but at the time, we were really scared. He talked to the sheriff, who transferred us to the utilities company. We gave them the address, and they told us we were too deep in the woods and that they didn't cover that area. However, they said to calm down and that they would contact the fire department to reach us. When the fire department came and investigated the whole area, they found out someone had cut our cabin's power from outside. Not only that, but they also discovered that someone had tried to forcefully open our cabin's back door, but didn't succeed. We were fortunate that nothing bad happened to us, but even now, when I think about that night, I wonder what might have happened if Dave hadn't called the local sheriff's department. Things might have taken a disturbing turn.